This is the Mobapad ChiTu. It costs around $60 and comes with everything you need in a Switch Pro controller. That includes NFC, waking the console from sleep, and HD rumble. The main appeal of this controller for me are the face buttons. They use clicky buttons and these feel sick. Not only the face buttons use these clicky buttons, but also the shoulder button. Maybe even the D-pad, but I'm not sure on that. It feels very clicky, but it might also just be something else. The Nintendo Switch doesn't recognize analog inputs on the triggers anyway, I think, so that these aren't analog isn't an issue in this case. There's a little bit of pre-travel on the triggers before the actual button press, but I didn't notice that while just playing games. Spamming them works well, and they feel like a mouse click. What makes this controller very special for me at least is the D-pad. It's very clicky and it just overall feels really awesome to use. Other Switch controllers, like the official Switch Pro controller, don't have such a good D-pad. This one, for example, is unreliable and doesn't feel quite as nice, but this one is just awesome. This might actually be my favorite D-pad. I just wish it was in that position because I just prefer both of the sticks down, but this is still fine. There is another option, like on the Xbox Elite 2 controller. This is also a round or octagonal 8-way kind of D-pad that you can put in there and then use that for fighting games, I guess. I really like the ergonomics of this controller due to the shape and also these texturized grips. They are not rubberized, but it's still really grippy, especially when I'm playing something and my hands get really sweaty. Some new controllers that are coming out use Hall effect joysticks so that the controller cannot develop stick drift. This one also uses Hall effect joysticks, and it even has these metal rings around the sticks, which prevents any plastic from being rubbed off while just moving the stick around, I think. On the back of the controller you will find two back buttons that can either be used as normal button presses or for macro sequences. I will get more into that, but for now I want to mention that for my hands at least, these are relatively easy to reach. Most third-party options for the Switch don't offer NFC support or HD rumble, but this one does. The NFC works fine, and they claim to use the same rumble as the official Switch Pro controller, which I have my doubts about that, but in games I didn't feel a big difference. It felt a little stronger, but the intensity was still similar, if that makes sense. I do want to mention though that I have an issue with the rumble on this controller, and that is that sometimes the rumble just doesn't stop. It will only stop until the next rumble action is triggered or I go to the home screen. This is kind of annoying, but I don't know if that's just a problem with my copy or if that's a more widespread issue. I noticed this a lot when playing Bayonetta 3 because there's a lot of actions that cause the controller to vibrate. Usually I turn the rumble off anyway, so this doesn't bother me that much. This controller has motion controls, and although I only played a little bit around with it in Breath of the Wild, I didn't have any issues with it. So I can say that it does have motion controls and they do work. Syncing it to the Switch is really easy. On the back, between the two back buttons, there's a third button which is for syncing it to the Switch. Just press the button once or hold it and it will connect to the Switch. You can also connect it to your PC via Bluetooth that way. But if you want to connect it to a phone like an Android or iOS, that's a bit of a different story. On Android you have to hold left on the D-pad and then press the home button. On iOS, hold right on the D-pad and press the home button. Another thing that not many third-party Switch Pro controllers can do is wake the console up from sleep, but this one can do that. It's nice that I can just press a button and the console turns on instead of me having to stand up, walk over to the Switch and turn it on manually. Now coming to the back buttons. To assign them, hold the gear button until it vibrates and the LED turns pink. Then input the macro you want and then the button you want to assign that macro to. I had an issue for a couple of days when I tried to remap the back buttons because I think on the controller itself you can only assign macros to those buttons. If you try assigning a single button press like normal B press, that won't work. I think that is because it always records it as a macro, which means if you try and time it, there's still going to be a little bit of time before each button press and after each button press, which means that you cannot hold down the button or rapid fire it. By default, the back buttons were mapped to A and B, by the way, and in theory, there's a reset button in this hole that you can poke with a sim eject tool, for example. It doesn't reset the back buttons and it also stays synced to my Switch. So what the hell is the button for? Now I was able to fix my issue though, and that was by using the Android app, but even that is easier said than done. I will spare you some of the details, so here's the stripped down version. The manual, which for some reason is not available online, nor in the box, has the correct instructions. Like I said, there's a sync button on the back that's basically only for connecting it to the Switch, and you have to press like the left on the D-pad and then the home button to connect it to a phone. You can still connect it to a phone with a sync button, but then the app won't recognize it and the name on your phone will be different for the controller. So make sure if you want to use the app that you connected while doing the D-pad and the home button trick. You will know that you did it correctly when the second LED will start to blink, and on your phone it will say Mobapad Pro HD. If you connect the controller using the sync button in the back, I think it will only say Pro Controller and will not be recognized by the app. Speaking of which, you're obviously gonna need the app. Apparently you can just download it by going to the Apple App Store and looking for Mobapad, but for Windows or Android you have to go to their website and download it from there. The Windows version, however, seems to get flagged by multiple antivirus programs, and my Windows didn't even want to install it at all, so I tried the Android version and that one seems to work. But there's more issues. It is still kind of difficult to connect the controller to the app. I think you have to grant access to the GPS and set it to high accuracy in order for the controller to be recognized by the app. I don't know why the hell that would be necessary, but that's the only way I could get it to connect. Luckily, the app itself is pretty intuitive, so once I'm done with it, I can just deny the access to the GPS again and I'm fine in that case. But I might also be an idiot and there could be an easier way to connect the controller to the phone, although there was someone on Reddit who also had problems with that. They claim to use a 1000 mAh battery and up to 30 hours of playtime. I'm not sure about the 30 hours, but I was able to play for a few days and a couple of hours a day without having to charge the controller in between. And charging it is also pretty quick. I think within like 90 minutes or less it was already back to full. That's not quite as good as the official Switch Pro controller, but it's still serviceable. To use the turbo functions, you hold the turbo button and the one you want to spam, and now when you hold the button it will rapid fire. If you hold the two buttons again, it will enter the next mode in which you only need to press the button to activate it, not hold it. Then hit both of them again to turn off the macro completely. You can also adjust the frequency of the turbo by holding the turbo button and then left on the D-pad or right to make it slower or faster. To change the color of the LED in the middle or turn it off completely, you can use the app or follow the instructions for the manual which are on screen right now. I've been using this controller pretty much every day for the last week and a half or so, and it has been really reliable to me, apart from the rumble problem and the fiasco with the app. But it's just always felt nice to use, and for me the battery life is also okay. The best part about it is that I can use this for basically anything, because it has everything I need in a controller. From good sticks, awesome clicky face buttons and shoulder buttons, the nice D-pad, to the back buttons, and it also can wake the console from sleep. Did I mention, by the way, that it uses USB-C? Anyway, it does, and there's also a cable inside the box. The only downside, apart from what I already mentioned with the rumble and the app, is potentially the lack of support and availability. I bought it on AliExpress and there's multiple sellers selling the same controller, and with that website you never really know if you're gonna get a good product or any product at all. Inside the box was a warranty card in Chinese, so good luck when you're trying to send it back for repair or a refund. However, this controller is still very new, I think, and it might still become available on like Amazon or in other online stores, where it might be easier to get a replacement or a refund. For $60, I think it could be a good pickup considering that it has a lot to offer while not having to make many compromises in return. However, for most people, a normal Switch Pro controller would probably be fine and more readily available. Unless you are like me, who already has way too many controllers that I don't really use, but I just like weird and wacky controllers too much. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video, maybe learned something along the way, and I wish you a great rest of the day, and I'll see you in the next video.